Rosa,
Hi.
Rosa.
I was just I was telling
Hi.
hi, I was telling folks because Instagram's gonna cut out soon, right? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we have about 10 minutes. Yeah, we have
Oh, or
10 minutes.
do you want to start over and so we could go longer if you want?
I can't go
Mm,
longer. It's
okay, well
Ramadan.
let's go. All
So,
right.
yeah. Yeah, so we got about 10 minutes and I will shut up because you can just go for it. Rosa, if you don't know, is a scholar, is an activist, is a journalist. Rosa Clemente ran for vice president in 2008 on the Green Party ticket with Cynthia McKinney. She did a lot of work around Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and does a lot of work on Black Latinx identity and really kind of building community and building kind of radical answers to what's happening. How do we respond? Not just how do we critique, but how do we respond? So I'll say all that and then say, welcome my sister, Rosa Clemente, and whatever you got to say, go for it.
Oh my God. Well, there's so much to say, but I mean, I think at this point, our communities have to realize that there will be no help coming from the federal government, and we'll have to figure out how we up mutual aid in our communities, but also how we begin to first and foremost follow cooperative economics. We have a couple great examples, especially in Jackson, Mississippi, with Cooperation Jackson and all the work they've been doing, which then leads me to believe that we also, or say that we must now have an international framework. As bad as things are here, there's no comparison to what's happening in Brazil, what's happening in Puerto Rico, what's happening in Nigeria, in South Africa, what's happening in Europe with the Roma population. That is the population that the Greek folks, it's the darker Roma people. What's happening to migrants? I think we're in this bubble right now where we're really trying to work our way out of the pandemic, or um, try to be so productive during this, as opposed to saying this is, and I am an agnostic person. Everybody knows I'm not religious, but I do feel this is like a moment that we have to pause, not doing the work, but what will be productive for our communities, right? Because right now we're in reactionary mode, which is how we should be, because we don't know what's happening state from state. Just because New York is on lockdown doesn't mean then people from New York are not going to go to Vermont or New Hampshire or come up here in upstate New York where we're about to reopen. So I think that's really important. And the second thing that I am really working hard on right now is my brother-in-law is in Sing Sing prison, which is in Ossining, New York. Most people know Sing Sing prison. It's infamous for not the right things. But 4 people have died there. And you know, unlike Gavin Newsom, which I, have a problem with some stuff, Andrew Cuomo, the governor here, has not released one person, either in Rikers, in juvenile detention, or in prisons. And
Mm.
there's a lot of brothers and sisters dying behind the walls right now. So I'm trying to uplift the work of RAP, which stands for Release Aging Prison Population Now. um because today there are more deaths in these prisons, and also they're not testing the incarcerated folks as much, so our numbers will eventually go up. So those are kind of like the 3 things I'm trying to support and focus on now.
Right. And last week's live actually was all about what's happening in jails and prisons. So Lumumba was on. We talked about
Yeah.
Dr. Matulu Shakur demands to release political prisoners, but
Yeah.
also what things look like inside prisons and jails, the work that Richie Reseda and others with Initiate Justice are doing. So we absolutely want to remind folks that we're still pushing there. I would love for you to talk because you and Dr. Brandy Cross were, I think, in our COVID-19 as a real threat. And I think that I'm curious about your take on this reopening of the country now, this effort to reopen the country, and really kind of the end to social distancing and physical distancing in states like Georgia, and what you think that means for Black people in particular.
Well, look, I mean, and more of the people up. You, you know, I have to say, I've never been happier to live in Albany, New York, which is 3 hours outside of New York City, because, again, I would say Andrew Cuomo has done his job as an elected official, but yet I critique him on the prison population. Also, he's appointed a new group to reimagine education. Naomi Klein wrote a brilliant piece about, like, he's trying to reimagine education by giving it to private corporations. But I think what we have to be ready for in our communities, right, is in the next month, not only will the supply chain continue to break, right now they're saying that 47% of the jobs that were lost will never come back. And what they're talking about particularly is African American Latinx folks that are the grocery workers, the frontline essential people. So what we're beginning is the age of automation here. And that's nothing new. Grace Lee Boggs and her husband talked about this in the 1970s. So now we'll be able to go into a supermarket or Walmart and check ourselves out, which means less people will be hired. That's already been happening, you know, in our states.
Right.
But you're talking about half the jobs that were lost never coming back. That means 30 million people won't have a job to go back to. So I'm really about, like, how are we going to prepare when people begin to panic, when they don't have money, when they are going to be evicted, you know? And we have to find a way out of this. What I do want people to realize is that we all have to do the work. That's the best thing that we can do, you know? And lastly, organizers and movements have to realize that, you know, after a while, Zoom calls aren't going to get us free, and who knows what's going to happen in this election. I truly believe they're going to try to cancel this election. And I know people think that's crazy, but I knew about this in February and people thought I was crazy. So, you know, I would just say politically, I've heard some really scary stuff from Jared Kushner the last 2 days where he's like, well, we'll see. Well, what do you mean we'll see? Election. But let me say that in Cuomo canceled Mary on June 23rd, but because of so much pressure and lawsuits, we will get to vote, you know, and I think that's a very important thing, especially because New York will probably go to Bernie Sanders. We have now. And I think we just have to also, as organizers, realize, like, we're going to have to deal with a lot of mental health. They're saying that's the second crisis that's coming right now. The mental health aspect of what happens when we have to lock down, what happens when you're alone and you're single, you might not have friends or, I mean, kids, or be with your spouse or your loved one. And in fact, the World Health Organization said we got to prepare for what's going to be massive suicides, massive addiction, and massive domestic abuse, right? And because
Absolutely.
only people can only hang on so long. You know, we as organizers, lastly, we really have to understand at this point that we have privilege. I am privileged when my husband goes out as an essential worker because then I have health care. I am privileged that I am self-employed and can get a check from the government. So I think we have to figure out really this cooperative economics, but maybe cooperative housing and cooperative living. I think the silver lining is all this is we can reimagine the world we want and try to push for that world we want.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we want to encourage everybody to engage in radical reimagining. I've been thinking a lot about Black autonomous communities, physical Black autonomous communities. I've been thinking about like Allensworth in California, spaces that we claimed for ourselves because we knew we couldn't get freedom with someone else dictating the rules and having power, such power over us. So we want to encourage everybody to engage in this radical reimagining. We're running out of time. So we want to thank you, Rosa, for joining us. We're
Love
going to
you, girl.
encourage
I
everybody
love
to
you.
stay up. Love you. Hug everybody for me. Hug everybody for me, okay?
Yes, we love you too. We send our love and
As
hope to see you soon. Love you so much, Melina. Thank you. Bye,
love you
everybody.
too.
Oh, Melina, I'm restarting the show, Disruptive
Huh?
Chaos, starting next week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Love you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Love you.